Yep. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight. I'd like to welcome you all on behalf of the Nahant Women's Club.
All right.
I'm Mia Karina. I'm the president of said Nahant Women's Club. We're doing this debate because we can, and we felt that it was important that all of the issues can be discussed and we can learn about our candidates. So without further ado, we have a very tight 90-minute schedule, and we'd like to get going and allow you to get out of here at a reasonable time tonight. So I'd like to, first of all, thank Wendy Payne for being the force of nature she always is and helping us to get this thing going. Wendy, thank you. We are truly not worthy. Also, Officer Schultz, thank you for being here. Our timekeeper for this evening is Nancy Carey, a longtime resident of Nahant. Our moderator tonight is Joyce Maroney. Joyce has moderated 2 prior debates, and Nancy has done the timekeeping for them, and was herself a candidate for Selectmen, so she knows what it's like. She's a 31-year resident of Nahant, but now she resides in Salem, so she is impartial. I would like to turn over the gavel to Joyce.
Thank you. All righty. So first I want to welcome our candidates. As Mia said, I've been in their position before. It is a little bit intimidating for the candidates to get up in front of all of you. So if we could greet our candidates, Josh Antrim, and Carl Macario. So thank you. I am going to take the first few minutes to run you through how we're going to manage the debate. Our objective tonight is to provide everybody watching here and at home with insights about our candidates that will aid you in making an informed decision on Saturday at the ballot box. So to that end, we're going to make every effort to give our candidates equal time to provide you with those insights. And so we will manage the debate as follows. Part 1, each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce himself to you, the audience, and the viewers. The order of the opening statements and the order of each discrete chunk of this debate moving forward was determined by a coin toss in the presence of the candidates and agreed to by the candidates in advance. So if you wonder why it isn't just going back and forth, that's why. So for the opening statements, Josh will go first, followed by Carl. In the second part of the agenda, I will post 3 predetermined questions, which the candidates have had in advance. We will begin with Josh, and Carl will follow, and then alternate back and forth between the 2. In this section, I will pose the question. Each candidate will then have 2 minutes to respond to the question, and the candidate who goes first on each question will then have a 1-minute interval to rebut his opponent at the end of each question if he wishes. In the third part of the agenda, each candidate will have the opportunity to pose a question to his opponent. He will have 1 minute to pose the question, 2 minutes to answer the question. Josh will go first, Carl will follow. The fourth part of the agenda is audience participation. So you will have had the opportunity to hear their opening statements, the 3 pre-planned questions, the questions they have asked each other. If you have a question you would like to see both candidates respond to, we're going to ask you to put your name on the index card that is at your seat, only your name, not the question you want to ask. And right before we start the audience participation part of the agenda, we'll have volunteers from the Women's Club going around literally with this hat, to collect your names. Oh, there are more hats. There are hats in the back. And so the way we will manage this to make the audience questioning as fair as possible, rather than having it be a mad scramble to the center aisle where death and mayhem ensues, we're only allowing 30 minutes for the audience questions. I will pull 10 names from the hat. We probably are only going to be able to get to 5 or 6 of the questioners. So we'll have the first 6 that I pull line up at the microphone. We'll take those questions, and if we get through all of those questions and we still have time left on the clock, then 7, 8, 9, 10 can come up to the mic. So you will consider yourselves our farm team if you wish. And then audience members, when you're asking a question, you will have 1 minute to ask your question. By the way, I'll repeat all these instructions before each section. But you only have 1 minute to ask your question. This is not the time to speechify. So if you spend your entire minute making a speech, I'm going to gavel you down, and I am heady with power with this in my hand, I will tell you. So just keep that in mind. If you have a question to ask, frame it as succinctly as you can. So at the end of this audience participation section, I'm going to have to use my judgment a little bit. So if somebody is in the midst of a question as the clock is winding down on the 30 minutes, I'll let it play out and we'll finish the question for both candidates, even if that goes a little over 30 minutes. But I'm not going to start a new question after 30 minutes. So we'll take as many as we can within that 30 minutes. Following that, each candidate will make a closing statement, beginning with Josh, ending with Carl. And last but not least, if you don't get your questions answered tonight, both candidates have agreed to hang around in the back of the room, the back of the hall, at the end of the debate. So if you have additional questions you'd like to ask, have at it when the debate is over. Rules of order. So how are we keeping time? Nancy is in charge of keeping time. For each timed response, Nancy is going to flash a flashlight up here to give us a 15-second warning.
See that?
The flashlight demo is happening. And when we hit the time, the 1 minute or 2 minutes, Nancy will ring the bell. Oh, ring it. Make sure we can hear it. All right. When the bell rings, stop talking. And when the bell rings, you folks keep talking, because again, I have the gavel. I'll gavel you down. Last but not least, many of you here are supporters of one of these two candidates. In the interest of trying to keep us as short on time as possible, I'm going to ask you to hold your applause for after they make their opening statements and then after they make their closing statements. If we're applauding every time somebody makes a point you like, we're going to be here a long time. So that is the instructions. I know it was a lot, and again, I'll refresh your memory at the beginning of each part. So without further ado, we're going to start with the candidate opening statements. And Josh, you have 2 minutes.
All right. Is that on? Yep. Thank you all for being here this evening. Thanks to the Women's Club for organizing and hosting the event. And also I'd like to thank Carl for being congenial through this whole thing. I think it's made it a lot easier for both of us. And
thank you.
I truly appreciate that.
No problem.
My name is Josh Antrim, and it's been my great pleasure to be part of this community for 58 years. I grew up here, and my wife Ellen and I have raised our 3 children here, and it's truly been a blessing. So I'm running for selectman at the highest level because I really love this town. Right now, our town is facing some serious challenges, and I think I can help resolve them. And now that my children are grown, the time is right for me to give back to the community that I love so much. Stretching back 30 years, I have a demonstrated interest and willingness to contribute to our town through various committees. I've been on the Open Space Committee for several years, the Alternative Energy Committee, Johnson School Council, chair of the Nahant Sailing Program for a number of years, as well as coaching Little League and soccer. My professional background is in engineering. I have 37 years of engineering experience, as well as business and project management experience. In particular, I want to point out the project management experience and long-term planning skills would be an asset to the Board of Selectmen here in Nahant. I'm running for Selectman because Nahant needs the kind of help I can provide. Yes, professional and skilled, but most importantly, a fair-minded person who listens more than he talks, is eager to collaborate with all.
All right.
That's it.
Thank you, Josh. All right. This is your opportunity. All right. Let's turn it over to you, Carl. 2 minutes.
You can tell I'm older. I got glasses. Real quick, we had an email yesterday about the podium heights. And as long as the podium's not taller than me, I'm happy. So I want to, my mom's home sick, my 80-year-old mother's home with sick, my best campaign worker, she's got pneumonia, so I hope she's watching on TV. Mom, I love you. I want to thank the Nahant Women's Club, to the attendees tonight and those that are watching on TV. As my sign says, my name is Carl Macario. I also want to thank Josh. He's a good man. He's run a great campaign. He's a gentleman. I lived at 6 Hovey Way now for 31 years. I've raised 2 children here. They both attended the Johnson School. I've served on Nahant Emergency Management now for 2 years, and I've seen firsthand out 24 hours in the 4 nor'easters we had last year what Nahant suffers when we have bad storms. I spent 13 and a half years at the Department of Homeland Security. I retired early to start my own business. While at the Department of Homeland Security, I'm proud to say that I started the first ever behavior-based screening program in the history of aviation in the United States. I'm very proud of that. So having said that, moving on to why I'm running for selectman, I want to be very, very clear. I love Nahant. We all love Nahant. It is truly an oasis from the rest of the world when you come across that causeway. That's Little Nahant, Big Nahant, Bass Point, all of it. It's a true oasis. This is a crucial time in our community, and I don't want to sit by and hope that things work themselves out. We can't shy away from tough decisions. I want to be involved, and I think more people in this community need to be involved in shaping our future. Over the years, too many times I've attended town meetings and see the same faces and the same people who, God bless them, stay involved. But again, more people need to get involved. James Lovell, Apollo 13 astronaut, once said, there are people who make things happen, there are people who watch things happen, and there are people who wonder what happened. I want to get involved and make things happen in a positive way. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Carl. Okay, we're going to move on to the 3 questions that the Women's Club membership asked of each candidate. So, reminder, each candidate has 2 minutes to respond to the question. Whichever candidate goes first in responding to each question for 2 minutes will have 1 minute to rebut, if he wishes, at the end of the second response. So, first question is, the town has incurred huge expenses due to the failure of our infrastructure, especially relating to our sewer system. What steps would you propose as selectmen to handle these failures and reduce our costs in the future? And that goes to Josh first.
Okay. Well, the best way to handle failures is to prevent them from occurring in the first place. And the best way to prevent them from occurring in the first place is to have solid preventive maintenance plans in place so that we can avoid these expensive failures. Right now, we have a situation where we don't fully understand the condition of our infrastructure because, unfortunately, some of the preventive maintenance has fallen by the wayside. So we need to restore that preventive maintenance plans. And then the first step we need to make is fully evaluate the state of our system so we understand what its condition is. That way we can identify the urgent needs and address those, and importantly, put long-term plans in place to address things that can be put off. I'm pleased that that process has started. It's in process right now. It's due to be finished in September. So in September, we should have a good understanding of what our infrastructure needs truly are. The good news is sewer systems, water systems are long life cycle systems. That means long-term maintenance plans are conducive for that kind of thing. Different components of our system have different lifespans. Pipes last longer than pumps. Meters maybe shorter than pressurized pumps. So we need to look at the life cycle of these systems and the risks associated with failures of these systems. So we're addressing the high-risk items like pressurized mains properly and utilizing proper planning to prevent expensive emergency repairs and minimize our long-term costs by stretching those costs out over years.
Okay. Thank you, Josh. Carl, your turn.
All right, thank you. Well, as Josh stated, and I'd like to elaborate a little more, the infrastructure in this town, as most of you people know, has been neglected. It's aging. In some cases, it's just failing completely, as we found last year with the water main break on the Linway. The town has engaged an engineering firm to take a look at the infrastructure, the water and the sewer system. We have mains in this town that are 6 inches that need to be 8 inches carrying water. We have 4-inch mains that should be 6-inch mains, and so on. But the cost of neglecting this over the years, and for whatever reason that it happened, is now forcing the town to look at borrowing and also other sources of revenue to help fix what's going on. Because, as you know, last year it cost us $1.4 million for the water main break on the Linway. And some of the things that I've looked at and that I will suggest to the town is some of the HUD grants, that the Community Development Block grants that actually cover water and sewer. And one of the things I've advocated since the beginning of my campaign is to get a full-time grant writer on a commission basis, so there's no cost to the town, there's no personnel cost, there's no salary, there's no benefit cost. There are plenty of people out there who work on a commission-based fee that they'll apply for every single grant. They'll sit down and go whatever they can for whatever particular town they're looking at, and they get up anywhere. I think right now it's like a 10%. So if they were to get $1 million, they'd get a $100,000 fee, and the town would get $900,000. So I think we need to look at those type of solutions instead of borrowing if we don't have to. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Carl. Josh, did you have anything you had to say in rebuttal?
Just on the grant writing, it's important to note that I don't think commissions can be paid out of the specific grants. Mm-hmm. In other words, that would have to come from a separate pool of money. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, there's ways around that, but okay.
Okay. Are we ready for question 2?
We are.
Yes? Okay. What is your understanding and opinion of the need to pass a Proposition 2.5 override to fund the budget of the town of Nahant? And Carl, this goes to you first.
Okay. So I've followed the town manager around, not because I like him, but because he spent time traveling around town at a particular neighborhood meeting and then 2 meetings to discuss the budget issue and what's facing the town and why we're looking at Proposition 2.5 override. A week ago tonight, Jerry Perry, who was the interim town manager for a while, as you know, Brendan Ward, the chairman of the FinCom, and also Tony Barletta got up and explained to us what the situation was in the town. We have a roughly $12 million budget, and we have a $14 million deficit. So Jerry Perry got up, and he spent 32 years at the Department of Local Services and said, here's the worst case scenario. If we don't approve a 2.5 override in 3 years, the state will come in with a control commission to take over the town. Similar to what happened in other towns, Lawrence, Hampton, Mass, with receivership. It's a version of receivership. So Jerry asked me after the meeting, oh, you're a candidate for selectman. What's your position on 2.5? I said, after listening to the three of you, what are our options? See, my concern is the easiest thing to do is run to the taxpayer and beat him over the head for more money. People got to realize 33% of the people who live in Nahant are over the age 70, and most of them are still in their own homes, and they're on fixed incomes. So what do? Do we go out? Where does it stop, the override? In this particular case, I honestly believe, after researching it myself and listening to people that are far more qualified than me, that on this particular instance, we need one. The town is headed for financial trouble, folks. Not just my opinion. People that have spent a lot of years looking into these type of things and dealing with the situation seem to think that's the case. So I don't know how you avoid it.
All right, thank you, Carl.
You're welcome.
Now I'm lost in my... Josh, your turn, sorry.
All right. Firstly, the vote for the override is on Saturday, same day as the Selectmen election. So by the time our votes are counted, the town will have decided whether we need an override or whether we're going to approve an override or not. So if elected, it's my responsibility and duty to play my hand to the best of my ability for the town. We do have a problem. We've known it's been coming for a long time. And frankly, as Carl pointed out, we haven't taken the necessary steps to address it. Tony, our new town administrator, Tony Bartlett, has come in. He walked into a tough situation, but he's been working hard, and I've been to some of his presentations on the budget. He's done a great job, and he has convinced me that the override is the right thing to do at this point in time. Nobody wants to pay more taxes, that's for sure. But we have $11 million in debt right now. We have about $425,000 in storm damage from last year. So if we don't pass the override, that's an additional loan. We have our stabilization fund. This currently has about $93,000 in it. That's the fund that we would fund any unexpected expenses from. So if we don't fund the stabilization fund properly, any future storm or sewer main break just means another loan, more interest, and the problem snowballs. So I too believe the time is right to bite the bullet and pass this override. That's what my one vote. We all get one vote. That's how I'm going to cast my vote.
Thank you, Josh. Carl, anything in rebuttal?
Yeah, just important thing to remember is if we don't do the override, we have to protect the bond rating of the town. And if the town's going to be able to borrow to do things like water and sewer infrastructure improvements, we have to protect the bond rating. And we won't do the override will help do that. So I think that's important to keep in mind too.
All right, thank you, Carl. All right, third of our pre-planned questions. And Josh will go first on this one. What do you perceive to be the most pressing issue with the town, and what is your strategy for a solution?
Well, the town is facing a few very serious problems right now, including the budget and the infrastructure that we just discussed. But what's most pressing right now is Northeastern University expansion, because this is a one moment in time situation, and this is the moment. So we can kick the can down the road one more year on the budget. We can kick the can down the road on the sewer system and water system. I don't advise it, but we could. But with Northeastern, we need to get our act together right now, because we need to establish our legal position and present that legal position to Northeastern. Nahant needs to be in the driver's seat in this thing. We need to control our destiny. We have the legal rights to do so. We have the financial means to fight this fight without affecting taxpayer rates from private donations. And we need to define to Northeastern what is acceptable in our town. That means size, location, aesthetics, parking, what's expected for payment in lieu of taxes. That, by the way, needs to be in cash, not in some exchange of goods. And most importantly, we need to say the rest of the land needs to go into conservation easement, so we're not fighting this exact same battle 5 years from now or 2 years from now. So it's time for Nahant to get on the same page. That means the Board of Selectmen, the Planning Board, the Concom, the Building Inspector, we need to be unified in our approach and set the ground rules for any negotiations with Northeastern.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Carl, your response.
My response is this. I think, and I'll get to my comments on Northeastern in my closing remarks, but I think the most pressing issue facing Nahant right now is the financial situation. The other issues are important, but we won't have to worry about Northeastern if the town goes into receivership. And I'm not trying to be the bearer of doom and gloom, but as I said to you, spending the last 2 months, month and a half, whatever it was, listening to people who do this for a living and have dealt with towns that have gone into receivership like Lawrence and Hamden and other towns have run into financial problems. Northeastern will be an afternote, folks. If we don't get the town on strong financial footing, it's not going to matter. All you have to do is go back in history and look at what's gone on with other towns that have gone into financial hardship. Right now, this town can't afford to build anything. The infrastructure won't support it. The water system won't support it. The sewer system won't support it. So Northeastern is important, and like I said, I'll mention that in my closing remarks, but that is by far, in my opinion, only one of the issues and not the issue facing the town. We have a financial crisis. Do you know a month and a half ago I had somebody say to me, what override? What do you mean the town's in trouble? Which is why I go back to my opening remarks that we need to get everybody involved. And God bless all of you who come to the same meeting over and over again in the town hall because you care. Other people need to care. Other people need to come from the town. I can't believe that some people don't even know what's going on in this town. Those are the people who wonder what happened. We need to make things happen, positive things happen, and we need to address the financial crisis facing this town. If you want the same level of police services, the same level of fire services that you get in this town, then we need to fix the financial structure, and we need to make the town strong financially and fiscally.
All right, thank you, Carl. Josh, any last comments you want to make?
That was a great answer.
Yeah, nice job.
All set? I actually would like to give these two a round of applause at this point for really a great model of very civil discourse. I think we all would
Joyce,
like to
can I
see
say
more of
one
that.
quick thing? It's not a camp. I just want to say that about 3 weeks ago, Josh and I were at a meeting here. Josh came up to me one-on-one, not in front of everybody else, and said the town's lucky to have two good guys running for selectmen. And I thought that was very nice.
All righty, we are going to move on to the next section, which is that each of the candidates has an opportunity. Oh, thank you. Chivalry lives. Chivalry lives. I was going to show off my new hip, but no. So this is the point where each of the candidates can ask each other a question. They have 1 minute to pose the question, and the opponent has 2 minutes to respond. So on the first round here, Josh has 1 minute to pose a question to Carl.
So in some of your literature, you've talked about the Northeastern situation and negotiating with them to help pay for some of our budget and infrastructure issues. How much do you think you can negotiate from Northeastern, and why do you think that?
In a dollar value?
In a dollar value.
I have no idea, but anything greater than zero is going to
Oh,
benefit.
Mike.
I don't know the monetary value that they would give us, but I think drawing a line in the sand, I know in some of your literature you've said 1,700 people gave me my marching orders. And I think if not to sit with Northeastern, at least to hear what they have to say, see what their plan is, see what they're willing to give the town, is a mistake. I think it's a disservice to the entire town of Nahant if we don't sit down and at least talk to them. You can't accomplish anything in life without communication. Communication is key in marriages, in businesses, in relationships, And I think that's why I said we need to sit down and negotiate with them. At least hear what they have to say. If we don't like it, we go in another direction. But to draw a line in the sand and not even communicate with them, I think is a big mistake. It's not fair to everybody in this town. So that's why I say what I say in my literature.
Okay.
So I have...
Also, all right,
Are you? Yeah, I'm done. Yep.
you've got more time. Okay. Carl, it is your turn to pose a question to Josh.
All right, I got a Northeastern question for you.
Okay, speak into the mic, Carl.
Yep. I have a question for you on Northeastern. If Northeastern is legally allowed to build there, what is your plan B? Because I know you've said you don't think they should be allowed to build, you don't want them to expand, you don't want to negotiate with them. What's your plan B? Because it's their land and they're probably going to build there.
Well, the first thing I'd say is that our zoning laws don't allow that. Our zoning laws say that no buildings except recreational buildings are allowed in natural resource area. All that land is natural resource area. There is a table of use, table in the zoning laws that contradicts that. We also have a clause that says the stricter interpretation applies for the zoning laws. So my interpretation of our zoning laws, not my opinion, the town's zoning laws that they voted on 25 years ago say that no building is allowed there.
Okay.
So that is a legal case. It's this case law that supports that being a valid legal position. I think we should exert that valid legal position, if nothing else, to gain leverage, so that when we do negotiate, I'm certainly not opposed to negotiating or talking, but when I negotiate, I want to be negotiating from a position of power, so that Nahant can dictate the terms, so that we can negotiate something that is acceptable to the town of Nahant. Hopefully something that can work for Northeastern, but it needs to be on our terms. Having the leverage is going to get us more money, more control over what they build and where. So that's the reason we need to exert our legal authority in this situation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, now is the time for audience participation. So you guys go ahead and get a drink of water while we make this work. So if our volunteers would collect the cards, so pass your cards to the center aisle if you wish to ask a question. Your card should just have your name on it. And instead of pulling the cards myself, who do I have in the audience who's younger than voting age? Yes. Would you like to come up and pull the names for me? Because you're not voting.
And these people do too, else they wouldn't be here. Right.
Thank you for participating in democracy.
Should have thought of that.
You are? Brendan, Blake and Brendan? Okay.
I kind of wish they had better lights in here.
Yeah.
And do you both go to the Johnson School?
I could see better if I had glasses on.
That's why I brought my cheaters.
Okay.
I lost my squatter on my own. But I ran out of time.
I ran out of time too.
And you know how many times I put this thing?
It feels like to me like you're getting a lot more information out. Wow, we say way more than I did.
Well, you know why? Because I can talk fast.
It helps.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is there anybody who wanted to have their name in the hat whose name is not in the hat? All right. So here's how it's going to work. I have Blake and Brendan here to help me. They are middle schoolers. They do not vote in the upcoming elections, so I don't know how this could get more fair. So we're going to pull 10 names. I will ask 1 through 6 to line up at the mic in the order that we call your name. So why don't we pull number 1? All right, number 1 is, it's Maureen Edison. All right, so you're going to be number 1. And actually, let me find my pen and put one on that card. All right, number 2.
Good evening.
Number 2 is Colleen Collins.
Should I begin or not?
No. I'm going to get the 6 of you up here first. But thank you for asking. Okay, number 3. No, stay. Well, rest. You can stay there. You're up there anyway. All right. Number 3 is Bill Mahoney. Okay. Number 4. It's a good thing I'm putting numbers on them. Oh, sorry. Number 4 is Jen McCarthy. These are too crinkly. Number 5 is Gary Prohorchik. Did I get that right? Do not want to mispronounce your name. Number 6. Number 6 is DeWitt Brown. Or Bill, as many of you know him. All right, now I'm pulling the farm team. By the way, I know nothing about sports, but I know farm team is like a backup mechanism. Okay. Number 7 is Ron Petnu? Okay, Ron, you're number 7. All right. Number 8, Michelle Capano. And again, 7 through 10, you can stay in your seats till we need you. Number 9 is Christian Bauda. And number 10, magic number 10, is Frank Guidara. Is number 10. All right. So let me sort. Oh, let's thank these gentlemen for their service. Thank you so much. Take your seats. Let me make sure I have these all in order. And just as a reminder, your question needs to be posed to both candidates. You have 1 minute to ask your question, and at 1 minute you are done. Nancy, I think you're going to have to, turn and to give people the warning. And in this section, first question from Maureen Edison. Carl will respond first, and then Josh. They will each have 2 minutes to answer your question. So, Mo, are you ready? Okay. Mo, you have 1 minute to ask your question.
Gentlemen, we've heard some wonderful ideas tonight. If the good Lord came down after the election and promised the winner one accomplishment, and she said, "You'll get it," what would you choose to accomplish as our elected selectmen?
Okay, Carl, you have 2 minutes.
I have 2 minutes. That's a great question. I actually think God did come to Nahant at some point in time because it's a beautiful place to live. But if I had one thing, I would ask that everything in one wave of the hand would be back to its natural state, the parks, the beaches, East Point, everything, and make it the most beautiful place that it could ever be. That would be my one wish. And then there would be no divisiveness over Northeastern, no Northeastern, wetlands, no wetlands. If the Lord came down, I'd say, "Lord, make it all perfect." And then he would take off Sunday, because he did. And we wouldn't have any meetings on Sunday or anything. So that would be my biggest wish, that he could wave his hand and all that would be fixed, and there would be plenty of lobster for the lobstermen. Because my next-door neighbor was a lobsterman, Mark Irvine, so God bless them, and that would be my biggest wish. Make it all go away and make it beautiful.
All right, thank you, Carl. Josh.
My one wish would be that we as a community can put aside any differences, accept the fact that we don't always agree on everything, but focus on all the things that we do agree on, put all that energy into positive ideas and accomplishments, and all work together to make Nahant the wonderful place that it can be. That's it. That was a short one.
thank you. Colleen, you're next.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
My question is for Mr. Macario.
Yes, ma'am.
Your calling card seems to be...
Actually, Josh will go first. So every question has to be posed to both candidates, and in this case, Josh's response would be first.
All right, now you're making me nervous.
How about those Red Sox?
Okay, well, Josh, your response, it's not the same question for both. I mean, I get the feeling that Josh will fight to preserve Northeastern from expanding their footprint.
So we need this framed in the form of a question that both candidates can respond to.
Okay, one candidate's calling card is that they plan to work with Northeastern, and Northeastern has been less than transparent. Can you give reasons why you would trust negotiations with Northeastern?
Okay, thank you, Colleen. So Josh, you've got 2 minutes.
First, I want to say, when I drove home last week, I do what I often do, which is take a little drive around town and take in some of the sights before I pull into the driveway. And as I drove by 40 steps, I looked up at the top of the bunker there, and I thought to myself, one of the biggest things I can do for this town is nothing. And that means when we look up at the top of that hill, that there's nothing there. It's kind of a funny thought, but I felt like it was profound in that particular moment. What was the rest of the question, Colleen? Yes, so I do plan to resist Northeastern's expansion, whether I'm elected or not, quite frankly. I do plan to continue to advocate for Nahant taking a strong legal stance so that we can be in the best position possible to negotiate an acceptable solution. I think once we're in the driver's seat legally, we have the community united that this is against the rules, then we can say to Northeastern, do you want to go to court for 5 years, or do you want to build something that we can both live with? And for me, personally, this is going to be a town decision, but my personal choice would be if you can build everything essentially on the footprint that you now have, maybe it's 30,000 square feet instead of 60,000 square feet. If it's built in a way that blends into the environment instead of tries to dominate the environment, if the parking is done maybe in a garage with vines growing down, a nice aesthetic that blends in with the surroundings, that's something I maybe could live with. Again, we need to put the rest of the property into conservation easement so we just don't keep going through this over and over again.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Carl, your response.
Sure. First of all, when I said my calling card, to reference your question, my calling card was to work with Northeastern. I was one of the 1,700 or so people that signed the original petition because I was led to believe that they were building a nuclear power plant up there. But since then, when I've looked into it and you take a step back and take the emotion out of it, and what you'll find in me, folks, is I'm a realist. And I stepped back and I said, look, I don't want to see any building up there that's going to destroy the area. Nobody does. You don't. He doesn't. So no one's going to let that happen. I asked somebody a few weeks ago, they said, we need to stop Northeastern. And I said, why? And you know what I got? This is what I got. Because they're going to ruin it. And I said, no, they're not. We're not going to let them ruin it. But you can't get benefits from them to help the town, especially in a financial crisis, if you don't sit down and hear what they have to say. They hired, it's my understanding, because I've looked into this, they hired a company that got a national award for ecologically friendly architectural designs that they're gonna hire to make that area that he's talking about, making it blend in with the landscape up there, to make it more aesthetically pleasing to the town. We need to sit down and talk to them. If you don't talk to them, you can't get anything. And if you don't negotiate with them, you can't get anything. And if we don't like what they have to say, then we go a different direction. But as I said earlier, to draw a line in the sand and say, no, Northeastern, stop them, to me, that's a disservice to everyone in the town. That's why my flyers and my banners and my signs say, for all of Nahant, not some of Nahant.
Okay, thank you, Carl. All right, our next question will be from Bill Mahoney.
Hi.
Hi, Bill.
Josh first. Oh, go ahead with your question, sorry.
Okay, my question pertains to, well, 2 days ago, I was putting my boat in, my lobster boat in. That evening, it rained probably 2 inches in town. 2 years ago, we had a huge storm, and it was terrible to see the town for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, inundated, all the wetlands. And it's probably the biggest issue in town is how are we going to square that away for the people who live in the wetlands. In August, we had a vote. It was a close vote on the Wetlands Bylaw. The bylaw had to do with a boundary upland of the wetlands to alleviate flooding for the people in the wetlands and also the wetlands proper. I'd like you people to talk about that.
Okay, so your question is
It has to do with the wetlands.
with the wetlands and
What
what they
do
think
about
can be done
the
to alleviate
Wetlands
flooding.
Bylaw and how we're going to alleviate flooding in Nahant.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you, Bill. Carl, you are going first on this one.
Bill, I agree with you that we need to protect the wetlands in Nahant. My problem with this is, and I'm still learning about it, is how do we go about doing that? Because you have people up in high areas that are flooding low areas, but are not in certain zones in the town. And the wetland bylaw that I think you're referring to, again, I'll be very honest with you. I had a big issue with the intent of the bylaw. And if I can back up a little bit, Nahant's a rocky coastal community, so I think it's a little bit disingenuous to compare us to other communities that have marshlands and inlets and things like that. But having said that, I agree with you, we need to protect the wetlands. The bylaw, there needs to be a bylaw. I don't know if it's this bylaw that we need. And I got to tell you, reading the FinCom report, and you have a FinCom committee that's headed by an attorney and very knowledgeable people, and what bothered me, quite frankly, is when people came out publicly and you had elected officials, never mind other people, publicly stating that this wetlands bylaw that we have currently was used to, quote, stop Northeastern, and it, quote, didn't work, so we need to repeal it, but we put 200-plus households in a buffer zone that weren't there before. I have a big problem with that. That's not fair to the rest of the community and the people that are in that buffer zone. When you come out, the intent to me was wrong. When you come out and say, well, we tried to stop Northeastern with this wetlands bylaw and it didn't work. I mean, you had a sitting selectman say that at a selectmen's meeting on February 14th, we need to repeal it because it didn't work. And, oh, you 250 people are in the zone? Sorry. I don't like that. It bothers me. It's not fair.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Josh, your response.
Well, the wetlands bylaw is certainly a controversial topic. I think in this case, and in all cases, we need to base our opinion on fact, not hearsay. At a fundamental level, the wetlands bylaw is about protecting yourself and your neighbors in the floodplains from unintended negative consequences. My campaign is about moving forward from today into the future, not looking back at, past and, focusing on grudges or slights or perceived slights. I do understand that some are concerned about the timing of the vote, how hot it was, how close the vote was, who advocated for the law and who was opposed to the law. I think we need to let go of those things and base our opinion on the value of the law. So I'd encourage everybody to take some time to learn about the law before they cast their vote on Saturday. There have been 2 presentations by the Concom, very good presentations. In case you weren't able to attend, here are some of the highlights. There is no impact on flood insurance. This is some of the misinformation that's been floating around. There's no impact on flood insurance for this bylaw change. Flood insurance is based on FEMA maps and zones. You can still maintain your yard. And in fact, one of the initiatives that Selectman Burrell has been advocating for is this community point system from FEMA. FEMA advocates for towns having a wetlands bylaw. In fact, you get points. You would lower your flood insurance if we collect the points for having a bylaw in place.
All right. Thank you very much, Josh. All right. Another prior selectman candidate, Jen McCarthy. What is your question for both candidates?
I was going to say, when I ran for selectman 9 years ago, I think it was the first time that we did a debate like this, and so I wanted to thank you both for doing this. I know I wanted to throw up all afternoon preparing to be up there and speak to the townspeople. So I think you're both doing a great job.
Thank you.
Our town runs with a lot of committees, and if it wasn't for the people who volunteered their time for these committees, our town wouldn't run the way it does. And so sometimes within these committees, there isn't always a consensus. And I am wondering if you could give examples from your past when you've had to work in a group where there's maybe not a consensus and or with an unsupportive team, and how did you solve that problem?
Thank you, Jen. Josh, you're first on this one.
Well, first of all, yeah, it's not uncommon to not have consensus on any committee. That's the purpose of having a committee. Certainly in my job, engineering, is very often the case where there's disagreement about the approach to a solution to a problem, but in the end of the day, you got to all get together and talk about the differences. And in engineering, we're kind of lucky because it's generally fact-based as opposed to opinion-based. But you have to lay out your case and try to convince the other folks to go see your point of view. I think I do a really good job of making sure I take the time to understand someone else's point of view, so I can see things from the other side of the coin. That's I guess a daily occurrence in my line of work, is working with different groups that have opposing views, whether it's the manufacturing guys want to have looser tolerances on the part to make the part cheaper, and the engineering guys want to make the stricter rules. That's a daily part of my life, and so far I seem to be getting the job done.
Thank you, Josh. Okay, Carl, same question for you.
Okay, thank you. Well, 13 and a half years at the TSA in the Department of Homeland Security, on some occasions I had over 300 plus employees under my watch during my shift, not to mention early on when I was supervising teams. So we had being in the federal government, they love bureaucracy, so we had committees and teams and groups, volunteer groups, that we had to work with, and with the Massport stakeholders, people with wide varieties of opinions, agendas, not to mention the security aspects of things going on, and trying to ensure that the traveling public had an enjoyable trip through the airport. So we faced a lot of challenges, a lot of times in my career, and it's in my closing remarks, that a big part of my job was not just security, but in a lot of cases it was mediation, it was negotiation, it's sitting with employees resolving all sorts of situations where we had issues between employees. I was the liaison between the Mass State Police and the TSA and the union reps. So I have a ton of experience dealing with different opinions, different groups, emotions, things that mean a lot to different people, and all that kind of stuff. So I spent a majority of my career doing that, and I've been trained in it too. We had to. When you start doing mediations and employee things like that, and conflicts, it's important that you understand how to do that and be able to do it. And I'm fortunate enough to be pretty good at it. You can always get better, but I have a lot of experience in that background, Jen.
Okay, thank you, Carl. All right, next question is from Gary Prochorchik. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes.
Close enough. And
It's debatable.
Carl will take your question first, but let's hear your question.
All right. My question is kind of twofold. Not much has improved over the last 5 years or so to improve our water and sewer infrastructure, along with many other things in town. What will you do to ensure that action is taken to facilitate improvement with and without the override?
Is that me, Joyce?
That's you, Carl, yeah.
Okay. So, as I said earlier, sir, that I think we don't have a choice on the infrastructure and the sewer system in the town is decaying at a fast rate. Some areas worse than others. And I, like I said earlier, I think looking at the HUD community block grants is a great way to do it because they actually have money put aside for water and sewer projects. So I think we need to look into that. I also need to look into a grant writer. Right now in this town, as Jen said, we have a lot of dedicated people that serve in committees. But right now we have Sharon who writes grants for the library and does a wonderful job. Linda Peterson is doing grant writing. We've got all these grant efforts running around town, and I'd like to see some of that centralized with somebody who does it full-time and knows where to go for these things, because without the override, it's going to be tougher, and without the override, it's going to be tougher to borrow money, and if you can't borrow money, you can't fix things. So if we look at the grant avenue seriously without an override, we may be able to do some things there. I think it'll slow down the pace of fixing the water and sewer. I think it'll slow down our ability to correct some of the more severe problems because we're not going to have the money to do it. And then if our bond rating drops because we're not paying our bills, it's going to severely impact the town. So I think with the override, it'll give us a better chance, and we still need to go after these other things, go after outside sources. I'm even willing to advocate that we go for special legislation to get money for the town from our congressional delegation. Nahant is a unique community. We have no commercial tax base. It's 98% property tax driven. And like I said, how many times are we going to hit people over the head for more money? So there's ways we can go at this, but we have to go at it in a concerted effort. And I think you're right. Over the last 5 years, we've been all over the map. Meanwhile, things are crushing underneath us.
Okay. Thank you, Carl. And Josh, your response?
Well, I think you're right that some of these things have been neglected over the last several years. And whether you asked how do we deal with that, whether or not the override passes. The main thing we need to do is improve the collaboration within our town. The Board of Selectmen need to take a lead in making sure they're connecting with these important committees that are doing a lot of good work instead of having various committees working independently and not collaborating for effective results. So, for example, I was pretty shocked when I went to a FinCom meeting a few months ago and Tony Barletta came to present a proposal for the override, and the question was raised, have you been meeting with the Board of Selectmen over the course of the year? And the answer was they hadn't met with them once. So that kind of thing needs to change. This has to happen throughout the year, so we don't get to the end of the year and suddenly we're on polar ends of the spectrum on the budget. It should be you get to the end of the year and you're all on the same page and you're not wondering what's going to go on the warrant. So similarly with the wetlands, you know, it pains me to give you this information, but the Concom people said that the Finance and Advisory Committee never met with them and asked for the facts about the wetlands, nor did the Board of Selectmen, yet they both opposed the wetlands law. I don't understand how you can oppose something that you're not informed about. So we need to really increase our collaboration and be proactive, action-based. I don't want to spend 3 years of my life on a Board of Selectmen that's not getting things done. It's about getting things done.
Okay, thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the question.
Next question is from Dr. Brown, and please pose your question.
You both, I assume, have read the warrant. Could you both discuss the FinCom recommendations on the number 27 article?
And can you refresh our memory on what is the number 27 article?
Wetlands.
Is this the Wetlands Bylaw repeal? Okay. So, Josh, can you take that first,
Okay.
please?
Well, an earlier question was about the wetlands, so I think I articulated some of the facts about that, but I'll just kind of continue with that thought. One of the things to know is that Nahant is not an outlier in having a wetlands bylaw. In fact, almost all of Massachusetts coastal towns have a wetlands bylaw. In fact, all the towns north of Winthrop to the New Hampshire border, with the exception of Essex and Salisbury, have a local wetlands bylaw. All the towns south of Boston, with the exception of Hull, all the way down to Cape Cod, Nantucket, and Martha's Vineyard, all have a wetlands bylaw, local wetlands bylaw. It's encouraged by FEMA. It's designed to protect your neighbors. It makes sense to me, and the notion that was expressed by Carl via one of the selectmen that it doesn't impact Northeastern, that's not true. It's not a silver bullet that stops Northeastern, but it makes them, it's another hurdle for them to clear. It's important to keep in mind that they need to go through planning board and Concom. But, so another factor to think about is that, we are very vulnerable to storm damage here. And as Carl's been pointing out, rightly so, we need to be pursuing grants at every opportunity. One of the things to keep in mind is we're going to be looking for grants to help protect our community from rising sea levels and increased storms. And I don't think it's going to look good to the grantors to be the town that just repealed their wetlands bylaw before they gave it a chance. So all I'm asking people is give it a chance. If it fails, you can repeal it in another year, or if there's parts of it that need changing, we can do that.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Carl, same question?
Okay. I don't know where to start, but you mentioned earlier about misinformation. Look, one thing I'm going to tell everybody in this room and everybody listening on TV, one thing I don't lack is passion. And I get passionate about things when I hear, you just admitted that the bylaw somewhat impacts Northeastern. And I said to you, and I said this earlier, when people publicly admit that they passed a bylaw to try to target an entity at the expense of other residents of this town, that's wrong. Okay? I think it's wrong. Because it's like, oh, well, you have to suffer, but we may be able to stop Northeastern. It's wrong. And I'll tell you another thing. When you have an attorney write an opinion with words like credible, unacceptable, significant, and adequate are open to interpretation, and then you have the FinCom lawyer say that this could open us up to litigation, not right. I'm very suspect of that, and I'm very suspect of the intent. I don't like the intent of this bylaw. And I'll tell you something else. To compare Nahant to Marshfield, Cape Cod, Provincetown, look at that map. It's a mistake. We're a Rocky Coast community. And I think, to compare, I don't really care about other communities. I care about Nahant. Other communities have supermarkets and stop signs. Do you want to put those in Nahant and stoplights? I mean, where's the comparison to the intent of this whole law? And the intent was, and it was publicly stated, let's stop Northeastern. That to me is wrong. I'm sorry, but it's wrong. You can't hurt some people if to benefit others. It's wrong.
Okay, thank you, Carl. All right, question. Okay, we got 5 minutes left. We're going to do one more question. Now, I have Ron. Are you Ron? No. I'm sorry. Ron is number 7. Ron Petru? I'm sorry.
Petrucci.
Okay, Petrucci. There you go. Okay. Ron, your question.
Northeastern's also obviously a hot button for this conversation and for the town in general. Have either of you met with Northeastern to this point? If so, what was the outcome? If not, what's holding you back?
Okay, Carl, you're first on this one.
I'm sorry, what was it? Have we met?
Have you met with Northeastern?
I have. I've talked to them 3 times. I've talked to Jeff Trussell, and I had somebody actually tell me I had no business talking to him. And my answer was, well, how do you make an informed decision when you're running for selectmen? How do you make an informed decision on anything if you don't seek out information? When you make a decision, at least in my mind, you gather as much information as you can. And then at the end of the day, you have to make the decision. I have to make the decision. He has to make a decision. So I reached out to them to find out what their story was. I went up there with a true or false list. Are you building a dormitory? True or false? No. Are you building a 60,000 square foot facility? No. 30,000 square feet of it. And you want to talk about misrepresentation and facts. There's material flying around out there that they're building a 60,000 square foot facility. 30,000 of it is underground. The air conditioning units are going underground. That to me is the service to the town, to get people to think that that's actually going on. And to talk to them about the design of the building. Look, and the other question, I'm going to tell you this. People say, well, how can you trust Northeastern? I meant to answer this earlier. You know what you do? You get ironclad legal agreements, and you get the ability to issue an injunction right away to stop them. And the other thing is, folks, everyone in this room and everyone at home knows this. Nobody's going to stick a fork in the ground up there without somebody noticing it or knowing about it. So you can stop them right away. But I think it's disingenuous to tell people that they're putting the equivalent of a wheelabrator up at Northeastern. You can't make a decision if you don't talk to people. And I've reached out to them to find out what the true or false. I have no allegiance to them. I'm not saying we trust them implicitly without being able to check on them and verify them. Have some oversight. But give the town a chance to see what they have to offer. If you don't like it, walk away.
Okay, Josh, your response.
I have not met with Northeastern. I was at both of the presentations they gave here. The second presentation they gave was for 3 different options, and I didn't like any of them. The thing that we need to keep in mind is that any development up there is forever. This can't be a one-time money grab to sell our soul forever because we need to fix our sewer. Nahant has been a town for 170 years without any significant contribution from Northeastern. We need to take care of ourselves. We need to tell Northeastern what is acceptable in our town. So again, that means clearly defining our legal position, getting, again, collaboration amongst our boards, planning board, Concom, building inspector, and the community at large, what is acceptable, and let Northeastern know what that is. Just as a data point, because I do like to base my opinions on fact, Northeastern's contribution to Boston works out to, in Boston they own $1.5 billion worth of what would be taxable property. They pay Boston $1.5 million. That's 2018 data. If they build a $50 million building up there, that works out to $50,000 for Nahant.
You don't know that.
It's the only fact we do know. It's the only fact we do know. They presented here two times. They were happy to share their building plans. They didn't say one word about what their contribution to this town would be. They had plenty of opportunity to do so.
Okay, I think that's it on question 7. Nancy, how much, hey. Nancy, how much time do we have left? Well, zilch. Okay, we are done. Thank you. Alrighty. So, we are in the final section of our debate. Each of the candidates has 2 minutes to make their closing statement, and we're going to start with Josh.
Okay. I just wanted to remind folks that my primary mission as selectman is really to pull this town together, to get people focusing their energy on positive ideals so that we can all work together to create the Nahant of the future that we all envision. We're not going to all always agree, but we can always respect everyone's opinion and not put our focus and energy into fighting over these individual issues, and instead put at least half of that energy into moving forward with all these other things that need to get done. We can't afford to keep ignoring problems because we're so busy bickering over this or that. I'm not doing this for myself. My life prior to 2 months ago was a very peaceful existence. I hope someday in the future it will be again. But for the next 3 years at least, I'm going to do what I can to give back to this town that has given so much to me. And I really want all of us to do that together. I think I have 3 tenets for my campaign. And one is it's facts, collaboration, and planning. So what that means is, for me, I want to take the time to learn the facts. I want to take the time to base my opinion on the facts and share all the facts with the townspeople so they can make up their own mind. Again, I'm running out of time, but so everyone's got to collaborate together to be effective, to move forward, and then long-term planning. This is what's been biting us for all these years.
Thank you, Josh. And Carl, your closing statement.
Yes, ma'am. So first of all, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, everyone watching on TV, and thank you. Did a great job. Ladies and gentlemen, we discussed a lot of issues tonight. Some Josh and I agree on and some we don't. But I think one thing we both agree on is we both have the best interest of Nahant at heart. We need a strong, energetic selectman, one who will fight the fight when it needs to be fought, and a selectman who can bring us all together. I think that person is me. My career and my job has always required me to be able to work with a variety of people in all sorts of situations. It has required me in many cases to be a mediator and or a negotiator. It has required me to be flexible. To draw a line in the sand on some of the issues is not a positive way to a solution. But I have to tell you that I'm tired. I'm tired. I think most of you are tired and weary of the divisiveness that some of these issues facing the town has caused. We as residents of this town and as elected officials need to bring the community together and continue to build for a strong future, a future that makes Nahant a beautiful coastal community that it is for our families and our children and those who follow us long after we're gone. We need to work together to build a financially strong town with a strong fiscal policy and plans. In the course of my business training with the military, I came across a great quote from General George S. Patton. I shared this with you, Peter. If everybody is thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking. We need also to think outside the box. We need to look at all possibilities of revenue while protecting this great place we call home. We cannot exclude some for the benefits of others. There needs to be open communication and dialogue on all sides of every issue. If this does not happen and both sides do not communicate and negotiate for the benefit of the whole town, I fear it could be the undoing of the town. God bless the taxpayers who, like myself, are probably going to be livid in having to clean up the mess that this continued divisiveness could potentially leave us in. I hope you vote for me on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you. This would be an excellent moment to shake hands if our official photographer is here someplace. Okay. So we are done with the formal part of the debate. Thank you for participating tonight, to the people here in the room, to the people on TV. The candidates will remain in the back of the room for a while after the meeting, and this debate is adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right, to the back of the room.
Good job. You glad it's over?
Yeah, we are.
And it was warm up here.
Yeah, it was.
I don't know about you guys.
Well, that's my daughter, so my dad.